Hey, what is up? It is Nikki, your go-to gal and life coach for young adults. I created my coaching program or practice to help young adults get their shit together, just like I did. Through taking a look at your calendar, your mind, and your habits, we work together through a step-by-step process to create the life that you actually want. And today we have a pretty hot topic we're talking about, and that is perfectionism. And we are talking about 5 ways perfectionism is hurting your progress, which I guarantee you can relate to these. So perfectionism, I always like to start with just the basics of understanding what perfectionism is. And when I Google perfectionism, a definition that I got in terms of psychology is a broad personality trait characterized by a person's concern with striving for flawlessness and perfection, and is accompanied by a critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding with others' valuations. So we can probably all relate to this, and I'm probably going to say that 1,000 times today. So why is this important to talk about? And really, when it comes to addressing perfectionism and its impacts on our progress is crucial, because it is a common obstacle that holds a lot of us back from reaching our full potential. And if you're wondering if you have perfectionistic tendencies, here are 5 signs. So we got Winston in the background having a morning spurt of energy. So sign number 1, you get super depressed or down when you fail. Sign number 2 is you have that nagging thought of it's never good enough when you do things. Number 3 is you're always looking at what you did wrong rather than what you did right. Number 4, you get defensive when someone highlights your errors. I feel bad, that's one for me. And number 5, you think asking for help means you're weak or incompetent. Did you shake your head or think that's me with these signs? I get it. Like I said, I mean, I feel a little victimized when I was writing this podcast outline because I'm like, damn, that's me. Shit. I'm calling myself out on these things, which is perfectly fine because it shows we're all human. Like having perfectionism tendencies is being a human, but it's the way we learn how to manage it and work through it rather than letting it stop us from doing what we actually want. So I want to dive right into the meat with the 5 ways perfectionism is hurting your progress. And you'll see throughout when I talk about all 5 of them is that they're all kind of interlinked. They all work together when it comes to perfectionism. And the first one that we have is it makes you less adaptive to changing circumstances. So reason number 1 is it makes you less adaptive to changing circumstances. And that's because change equals uncertainty and risk. If there's change, there's risk involved. And perfectionism or perfectionists are not okay with uncertainty and change. So they don't like change because they're not in control. This is a very big one right here. And it's hard to not be in control of things. I get it, but that's part of life, number 1, of course. But when you become more resistant, things get worse for you, essentially. And it really ties into reason number 2 that I'm going to tell you in a second. But I want to give a great example of this with what happened to me recently. So I just recently went on vacation and I was a part of all that flight chaos that had been happening. And this is being recorded in July of 2023. So if you know, you know. There was just like a clusterfuck of weird things that happened with weather, lack of staff, with delays. Staff were being left in certain places so they couldn't get to the next flights. It was just like a whole trickle down. And so me and my husband were flying to Denver, Colorado, and we were so nervous. And so we had a layover in Boston, then Boston to Denver. And so we got to Boston. We're like, cool, everything's working out so far. We're doing okay. We had a slight delay, like 20, 30 minutes, not a big deal. We get loaded up. We're all good. We literally sit in the airplane for 2 hours before we even take off. Had to do with a whole bunch of air traffic control issues, further delays. So our 4-hour flight turned into a 6-hour flight. And we were flying in the evening. So we ended up getting to Denver around like 11:30, we'll say. And at that point, we were getting really frustrated, antsy. We wait around forever for our bags. And then we finally get our bags. We go to the budget car rental place. There are like 50 people deep in this line at, now it's about 12:30 in the morning. And it sent us through a loop. We ended up waiting in line for 2 hours to get our rental car. We didn't end up getting to our location until 4 a.m., which is essentially 6 a.m. here on Eastern Standard Time, where I live. So that meant I was up for 24 hours total. And it was just a whole bunch of change. And my husband was really resistant to the change. He was not happy with it. And I understand, because this is the perfectionist tendency that he has, where he wants it to go according to plan. But I can tell you the difference with, I don't want to say going with the flow, because I don't think going with the flow is always beneficial, but being open to the change. And the biggest thing in this situation, when change is happening, it's really good to ask yourself, is this within my control? None of that in that situation was within our control. And I think that's what really helped me be okay and more receptive to the change, because I'm like, well, I can't do anything about this. So it is what it is. It's going to be a really rough night, really rough day the next day, and then we'll get through it. So that's a really good question to ask yourself to help you understand, if you have resistance or not to the change, and kind of how you can change it if it's within your control as well. So the second way perfectionism is hurting your progress is it causes unnecessary anxiety, which all of us are probably like, me, I've seen that. I know that. Personal experience. We all got it, right? So always striving for perfectionism or to be perfect is just simply mentally draining. And because you're worrying so much about making the right step or taking the right action, which then prompts worrying, overthinking, and creates anxiety. I mean, it is freaking exhausting mentally to just always second guess what you're doing to take the right step. And I'll tell you right now, when you overthink it so much about taking the right step, you end up not taking the right step because you're just so in your head about it and you're just not doing it. And like I said, it's exhausting. And when you exhaust yourself to the point so much by trying to figure out what step to take in order to be perfect, you can't show up in the rest of your life doing other things. Striving for perfectionism every week, or striving for perfection in every task or project can consume a really significant amount of time and energy. And it also takes longer to get things done. So I have a great example of this for me when it comes to work. So perfectionism really shows up in my work life. It can show up in your work life, your personal life, or both. I get it. But when I think about perfectionism, I mean, it is much horrible in my business, in my previous work, than it is in my personal life. So I remember when in my previous role, I was a training manager. So I did a lot of employee development, this sort of stuff. And the company that I was working for does like an annual all employee training day, staff day, where they go over, how the business is doing. We may have a motivational speaker. We do all this kind of stuff. And I was in charge of the fun part, which is exciting, right? We got to play a series of games, and I was to orchestrate it all. And this is with like 80 people. So I had to stand up in front of 80 people and play games with everybody. Which you think it's kind of like, oh, cool. Like I have the easy part. I can kind of sit back and relax. But no, I started overthinking it and really creating anxiety, because I was like, well, are you sure they're going to have fun? What if they think this is stupid? Da, 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 da. And I got myself so amped up and had so much anxiety. By the time it was like, I remember the conference was like 8 to 4. And my portion of it was like at 10 a.m. or something. And by the time I was done, let's say at 11, it took about an hour, I was useless for the rest of the day. I had such a massive adrenaline dump. I was just worthless. I could not focus. I could not do anything else. I literally, at the end of that conference, went home and went to bed because the anxiety took up so much of my mental energy and physical energy. I just couldn't do anything else because I was so worried about my portion of the conference being perfect, everybody having fun and having a great time. I mean, everybody did have a good time, but it's not worth it, right? All right, reason number 3, or the third way how perfectionism is hurting your progress. It hampers your creativity. And all my creatives that are listening to this, I know you guys can relate to this one. All right. No, Winston's doing a nice stretch. So perfectionism stifles creativity and innovation. And really, because the fear of making mistakes or deviating from the norm can hinder individuals from exploring new ideas and, of course, taking new creative approaches. Once again, because change means new things, going to the first way, you think change means new things. Let me collect my thoughts for a second. You think change, so you're more focused on the right thing rather than creatively thinking of new opportunities. And as a creative person, sorry, I had to take a sip. As a creative person, when you're so worried about taking the perfect step, the right step, you can't think creatively and outside of the box. And as you know, when you think outside the box and do things that are outside of the norm, that's typically where you get the greatest results. I mean, think about all these entrepreneurs and people like this that have done these things. It's because they started outside the box. They deviated from the norm and they allowed their creativity to flow through rather than finding the perfect product or the perfect business or the opportunity, whatever it might be. And especially for someone in your 20s or as a young adult, this can be shown in work or school as well. So like with projects, papers, homework, you feel stuck because you can't get the assignment moving because you're not thinking creatively. But when you get an idea and then start the process, you overthink it because it may not be perfect. So then you get stuck and don't know what to do. It's like this whole cycle. And it depends on, of course, you as a person, but your outside influence as well. I'm going to go off on a little tangent right now. When it comes to work or school, in my previous role, I had a extreme perfectionist as a boss. And she was so extreme that it literally killed my creativity and I couldn't think of anything to do, any projects, this sort of stuff. So it turned me into like this overbearing perfectionist as well. And this could happen in work as well, in relationships, all these types of things. So I think it's important to understand, there is, of course, a level of like, you need to separate other people's thoughts and opinions from yours, but there are outside influences that can affect how much of a perfectionist you are. And it takes years to work through these things as well. I have been out of that role for 3 years now, and I still have tendencies come through with perfectionism from my old boss, my old influences. All right, so number 4, the fourth way perfectionism is hurting your progress is it makes you prone to procrastination. And if you have ADD, ADHD as well, it's even worse. All right, procrastination is increased with perfectionism because of 2 things: indecisiveness and daunting tasks. Indecisiveness is the inability to make a decision, which involves a potential degree of uncertainty. So going back to that number 1 with change and uncertainty. So instead of taking the challenge on now or taking the task on now, whatever it might be, you just prolong the decision or the task or the action because the threat of failure causes paralysis by analysis. Prime example, going back to the school and work thing that I just talked about. You're so critical about writing a paper, doing a project. Even for me, it was sending out a company-wide email. Holy smokes, that used to, all the ways that were hurting my progress, like the procrastination, the anxiety, the change, overthinking it all. So you're so critical about these things, you decide just to wait and do it later. So you procrastinate on it because it may not be perfect and you're indecisive or it just seems too scary to do. You're just like, oh, I just can't click that send button. That's happened to me. Here's a little trick. I don't know if it'll be beneficial or not, but I'm going to tell you anyways. So when I had to send out really scary emails, I would read them like 20,000 times. It was so ridiculous to the point where I would just overlook errors because I was so used to looking at it. So there's another way it doesn't benefit you. But when I had to send out really big emails, I would schedule them. So you can schedule emails instead of send it now. So I'd schedule it for like an hour or 2 later, some random time. So I would forget about it. So when it got sent out, I was like, oh shit, I just sent an email. But it was actually a really good tactic to make sure that it still gets sent out, because at that point I had already forgotten about it. So it wasn't a big deal. And of course, at that point, it was too late. It already got sent out. So it doesn't matter if anything was right or wrong on there. All right. So another example with this is just one thing I want to say for people struggling with perfectionism. It can look like the opposite as well. And what I mean by that, for example, if I take immediate action because I have control over a situation or circumstance, or I take control over a situation or circumstance because I try to make it perfect. And this kind of comes into play where it's like the opposite of procrastination. So this goes back to the first one where change makes you less adaptive. I would try and over control things to make sure that it's as perfect as possible so I don't have to deal with the perfectionistic insecurities and that sort of stuff. All right, and then number 5, the 5th way perfectionism is hurting your progress is that it allows negative self-talk. Everyone has an inner critic. It's that nagging voice that persistently calls attention to our inadequacies and in the process gives you doubt, guilt, shame, so on and so forth, right? We all have it, regardless if you're a perfectionist or not. We have a negative self-talk or inner critic inside. But when we are perfectionists, I just can't talk today. When we are perfectionists, that inner critic is far bigger than maybe in someone else's head that is not a perfectionist. All right. And it's those thoughts of, that was a stupid mistake. You should have done blank instead. Why can't I do anything right? Of course this happened to me. Why can't I catch a break? Have you had any of those thoughts? Yeah, that's negative self-talk, which is not beneficial because When we have those thoughts, it only produces negative feelings, which goes into the guilt, the doubt, the shame. And when we have negative feelings like guilt, doubt, or shame, we're not going to show up the way we want. We're not going to take the right actions that we need to take to produce the results that we want, right? So for example, let's go back to the or paper example. If you have this like circumstance where you have to write this paper and you're thinking, why can't I do anything right? I should have picked this other topic. This is stupid. I can't do this. You're going to then feel bad. You're going to have doubt about yourself. And when you have doubt about yourself and your abilities, how do you think that's going to show up in the way you write a paper? It's probably going to show up and it's not going to be very fluid, not well put together, disjointed, maybe not fully accurate information. And the result is going to be you getting a D instead of a B on that paper, right? So that negative self-talk is actually a lot more toxic than you think it actually is. And being a perfectionist, it's going to be even worse. All right. So the 5 ways perfectionism is hurting your progress. Quick recap. Number 1, it makes you less adaptive to changing circumstances. Number 2, it creates unnecessary anxiety. Number 3, it hampers your creativity. Number 4, it makes you prone to procrastination. And number 5, it allows negative self-talk. And I just have to say as well, because I'm chuckling in the back of my head, of course I'm talking to you guys, but I got my own inner critic going on in the background right now, thinking about how this episode is not as perfect as it could be. I stumbled on my words. I may have been lost in a thought randomly. I may look distracted. I don't know. But there's the inner critic coming up for me right now, talking about all the things that are not right with this podcast that I'm recording right now, which is not true. There's great information in here. What we're talking about affects everybody. You need to know, and that's the biggest thing. All right. When it comes to perfectionism, the secret is taking action. All right. And going back to what I said about the podcast, I could record this and waste hours more of my time to make this perfect, but it's never going to be perfect. And I'm just taking action and doing this and showing up as myself, regardless if it's perfect or not. And I'm giving you guys this information. All right. So my adulting and action coaching program really addresses all of these reasons and helps you with the most important part about overcoming procrastination and perfectionism, which is taking action. All right. One thing I do pride myself on is being a very action-oriented coach, where I work with my clients and we meet on a weekly basis to create consistency and accountability, which are 2 key secret ingredients that you need for your own success. During that time where we work together in that coaching program, I'll walk you through my 5-step process that'll help you get to your shit together. And we do that by identifying where you're falling short and uncovering what shit you need to get together and evaluating your current habits. We then discover who you want to become by exploring your future self and really identifying what that person looks like. And that's, of course, because we're so used to going day by day, we don't take time to think about our future. Then we dive into tracking your time through planning your days, prioritizing what's most important, and following through on tasks. The 4th step in that framework is managing your mind. So learning about your mindset, controlling the stress, and transforming that perspective that you have. And then lastly, we unlock your potential by adjusting your actions in order to change your outcomes. So life is already hard enough without a life coach. Why not make it easier for yourself and finally get your shit together? So I have really enjoyed this episode. Perfectionism is such a huge thing. We could talk about it on and on. Drop comments below. Tell me what resonated with you. What way is really hindering your progress the most? Where do you want to focus on, or what do you want to focus on when it comes to perfectionism? And lastly, one book, oh, I just so happen to have it right here. One book that is super great, excuse me, that has to do with perfectionism is called The Joy of Imperfectionism, or The Joy of Imperfection, sorry. And it's by Damon Zaharovitz. I don't know how to pronounce that. But it is a stress-free guide to silencing your inner critic, conquering perfectionism, and becoming the best version of yourself. It's a really easy read if you're looking for some sort of book to kind of uncover and go through some more things when it comes to perfectionism. That is the book to go to. All right, y'all. I hope you have an awesome Thursday or whatever day you are listening to this, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.